Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Govardhana Balaba Giridhari Govardhana Balaba Giridhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Bonachari Jamuna Tira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Giridhari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Giridhari Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giridhari Gopi Jana Balaba Giridhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Vrindavaneshwara Kunja Vihare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajika Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajika Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai. Navadvip Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvip Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayat. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavatina Ishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, text 13, chapter 13, text number 28. Is that correct? Grihanena Privya Paravim Vijigran Kroda Padesha Swayam Advaranga Karala Damstro Vyaka Rala Drigbyam Udviksha Vipram Grinato Vishat Kam Grinena Prayava Paravim Vijigram Grinena Pravitya Padva Parivam Vijigram Kudapadesha Swayamad Varanga Kudapadesha Swayamad Varanga Karaladam Stropya Karala Drigbyam Udviksha Vipram Grinato Vishatkam Granena Pratviya Paravam Vigriyan Kudapadesha Swayam Advaranga Karaladam Stropya Karta Drigyam Udviksha Vipram Grinato Vashishat Kam Granena Pritva Paravim Vigyaram Kura Parisham Vayam Swadvagaranga Karaladam Stropya Karala Vigyam Kridviksha Vipram Grinato Vishatkam Granena Privya Paravam Vijigram Pradapadesha Swayamad Varanga Karaladam Stropya Karala Drigbyam Gunato Vishatkam. Anybody else? Granena Pridva Padavim Vigriyam Kurovadisham Swayamad Varanga Karaladam Stropya Karala Drigbyam Udviksha Vipram Grinato Vishatkam. Granena, by smelling. Pritya, of the earth. Padavim, situation. Vijigran, searching after the earth. Kroda apadeshaha, assuming the body of a hog. Svayam, personally. Advara, transcendental. Angaha, body. Karala, fearful. Damstraha, teeth, tusks. Abhi, in spite of. Akarala, not fearful. Drigbyam, by his glance. Udviksha, glancing over. Vipran, all the Brahmana devotees. Granta, who were engaged in prayers. Avishat, entered. Come, the water. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. He was personally the Supreme Lord Vishnu and was therefore transcendental. Yet because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotees, brahmanas, engaged in offering prayers. Thus he entered the water. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. We should always remember that although the body of a hog is material, the hog form of the Lord was not materially contaminated. It is not possible for an earthly hog to assume a gigantic form spreading throughout the sky, beginning from the Satya Loka. His body is always transcendental in all circumstances. Therefore, the assumption of the form of a boar is only his pastimes. His body is all Vedas, or transcendental. But since he had assumed the form of a boar, he began to search out the earth by smelling, just like a hog. The Lord can perfectly play the part of any living entity. The gigantic feature of the Lord was certainly very fearful for all non-devotees. But to the pure devotees of the Lord, he was not at all fearful. On the contrary, he was so pleasingly glancing upon his devotees that all of them felt transcendental happiness. The verse again, he was personally the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, and was therefore transcendental. Yet because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotee Brahmins engaged in offering prayers. Thus he entered the water. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Jena Tasma Ai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Caitanya Manobhistam Strapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. So Prabhupada's mentioning that we should always remember that Krishna was not an ordinary hog or pig. He actually spread his incarnation from Satyaloka, which is impossible for an ordinary body. As Prabhupada said, his body is transcendental in all circumstances. Therefore, the assumption of the form of a boar is only his pastime. So the point is that whatever form the Lord takes, it's transcendental. And whatever form he takes is worshipable, whether it's the body of a hog, the body of a human being, the body of a dog, the body of a cat, or whatever. It's all Krishna. So this helps us to understand the concept that we're not the body. A hog is not necessarily a very pleasant thing to look at, but a hog that's in the form of Krishna, as in the form of a hog, is very transcendental and very lovable. And as it's said in the purport, he was playing the role of a hog, and therefore he searched out Hiranyaksha and the earth by smell, and found that the earth was submerged very deeply in the water. And in order to relieve the situation, he had to fight with Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha was originally one of the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jaya and Vijaya. Jaya and Vijaya were given the choice of being devotees of Krishna in 7 births or becoming demonic personalities in 3 births. So they chose to get the bodies of demons because they were anxious to get back to the spiritual world, to be the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. They were not ordinary people. And some of you may have noticed that, I think I mentioned this before, that on the altar Lord Nrsingadev is sitting on the throne of Hiranyakashipu after he slays him. He doesn't do that with most demons, but he did that because Hiranyakashipu had been a doorkeeper of Vaikuntha in the past, and therefore he was given special mercy by Krishna, and Krishna sat on his throne as if he were the king, because Hiranyakashipu had attained the spiritual world at Vaikuntha. And Prabhupada called his spiritual master a Vaikuntha man. So Vaikuntha sometimes means the original Krishna Loka, and sometimes it means the spiritual sky, and sometimes it means Krishna's abode. So it has various meanings. The three births that the Jaya and Vijaya had to take were difficult. They were difficult. They were Shishupala, Dantravakya, Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyaksha. And I think I mentioned Dantravaka and Dandakaranya. Dandakaranya was scheduled, as we know, he was actually killed by Krishna, and these were not ordinary demons. And after ordinary demons are sometimes elevated to the status of impersonal realization or Brahmajyoti. But usually they return to the material world and they come back because they don't get any feeling of or nectar. It's just a feeling of undifferentiated oneness. But when a person is elevated to Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan, there's a rapport between them and Krishna, which is very personal, and it's different. So Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and Ravana and Kumbhakarna, his brother, were not ordinary. They wanted to return to their post in Vaikuntha as soon as possible. So they were awarded, after 3 births, going back to Vaikuntha Loka. And they, even though most demons are very fearful to devotees, demons in the material world, the devotees thought that this was very beautiful, even though it was in the form of a hog, very beautiful form. Before, I think I was either a new devotee or it was before a devotee, I saw a film called Gold Fever. And it was filmed in Brazil. Prabhupada mentions in lectures and in one of his purports that Brazil is noted for having vast deposits of gold. And in the film, there were rafts on the Amazon River, a fast-flowing part of the Amazon River, and 4 rafts. And on each raft was situated a kind of a sort of like a pump, a machine, not a human being, but a machine. And this machine was pumping air down to the people down below who were in diving bells, metal helmets that were enabling them to survive underwater. The competition was so fierce that each raft belonged to a different organization or a different country. And because the competition was so fierce, sometimes the air supplies were cut by people who were in control of the various rafts, and the diving people actually drowned in the Amazon River as they were looking for gold. So it's a very fierce competition to get the gold out of Brazil. Prabhupada mentions in a lecture that Ravana's brother, I think his name was Kundakarma, was living in that country, and he made a tunnel. We think we're very advanced in devotional service or in material life because we can do so many things. We can float on the water. We can live under the water. We can climb great mountains, and we're very impressed by advances in chemistry, especially in the medical field, and advances in communication, advances that are all over in the world, and people tend to think that this is going forward and making advancement in medicine, in communication, and in transportation, like flying in an airplane. But all these things were actually possible before by great yogis who could, without the use of spaceships or rockets, could acquire things, could even reach to the moon planet. And as Prabhupada has mentioned before, it's even questionable whether people actually went to the moon. there's an invisible planet called Rahu, and Prabhupada says that he may disagree with the current thought that people could travel to the moon, but because they couldn't stay there, because they didn't know the yogic principle of staying in a higher planetary system, they had to come back. And therefore, he has concluded that they didn't actually go there. So this is a little controversial, but this is Prabhupada's position, that one actually never went to the moon. In New Zealand and maybe in this country, I don't know if I've lived here long enough, but there's sayings, as good as gold or as bad as snakes. You can be either as good as gold or bad as snakes. Gold is considered to be beautiful or wonderful, or the ultimate achievement is to have a lot of gold. So the material world is made up of people who are thinking they're getting more and more advanced, they're living a longer time. And very early on, when Prabhupada was preaching about nectar of devotion, in 1972, the book was printed, but in 1969 he completed the 1969 in Los Angeles. He completed the translation of Nectar of Devotion, and he went on to tell everyone in the preface and introduction that this book is just a summary study of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And if he were to translate the whole thing, it would come to more than 1,000 pages. But because the devotees that were in charge didn't know the language very well, or didn't know Sanskrit, he limited it to 400 pages. And he said in his lecture in 1972 in Los Angeles, after the book was published, he was very happy that the book was finally printed after many hard days and weeks and months and years of struggle. He was very happy that the book was published, and he asked all the devotees to read the book over and over, not just once and check it off, but to read it repeatedly. That was the word he used. I don't know how it was translated, but he used the word repeatedly. And he said you don't have to ask a question every time there's something you don't understand, but if you read the book over and over and over again, the answers will automatically come. You don't have to ask me everything. So he was very keen to get this book published. And this is about halfway through his sojourn in the material world, 1969, 1970. He came in 1966, was his original foray into the West. And he said that despite all the great attempts to have peace in the world, like he mentions the United Nations, there is still war and struggle going on. Even in India, which is considered to be a very peaceful place, there's conflict with the Tamil Tigers in southern India and in Sri Lanka. But Sri Lanka was destroyed by a servant of Ramchandra, Hanumanji. Even though it was a city of gold, there must have been some other substances in there, like wood, because the whole city was burned down by Hanuman. Hanuman was a great devotee of Lord Ramchandra. And even though he was a great servant of Lord Ramachandra, he didn't worship Krishna specifically. And when people wonder why this devotee, how he could worship Lord Ramachandra, Prabhupada has told us that there's no difference really between Lord Ram and Lord Krishna. Therefore we say Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, because there's no difference in this in the higher sense between Ram and Krishna. Although percentages are sometimes offered, how Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He has all the good qualities of all the great demigods and all the various incarnations and all the different manifestations of Krishna. Krishna is supreme, always supreme, and that's what he says. So in this verse, even though he's taken the body of an animal, he is not ordinary. And he glanced very favorably, very lovingly upon his devotees, and they took it very pleasingly that it's actually Krishna, not an ordinary animal. Krishna is always transcendental in every position, and sometimes it's challenged why are we using modern facilities, modern amenities like refrigerators, motor cars, airplanes, and injections, and why do we have hospitals and so on, when at the same time we're very critical of the material world being somewhat of a inadequate or uncomfortable place to be in. The point is that the great yogis, because they perfected, and Prabhupada talks about this in great detail in Nectar of Devotion and other places, the devotees could fly without vibrations and without big motors making a lot of noise. They actually could. It's a type of perfection, and there's many types of yogic perfection. There's one called animasiddhi, or acquisition, where one can reach into a garden in a very far away place. Like someone came to his home once. He told this story. It's not a story; it's an actual fact. Who was a yogi, and his Prabhupada's father asked him if he could get a pomegranate. He said, well, I don't have any pomegranates. They're very prolific in Afghanistan. So he was able to reach all the way from India to Afghanistan and pick a pomegranate and offer it to Krishna and give it to the devotees. So this acquisition is called prapti siddhi, or acquisition, this perfectional stage. But many scientists have already achieved that, and just like now, through the internet, we can go to get books out of a library in a place like Tokyo or Johannesburg or Paris or someplace like that, just by pushing a few buttons. So we think this is great advancement. But devotees could do this without computers, without any machinery, just by perfecting yoga. They perfected acquisition. And they could even do things that were violating of the common functions of the material society. So he mentions that one scholar, a German man, had realized that they were very advanced. These yogis were very, very much advanced. They could do things that we do with machines or computers or some machinery. But they could do it without machinery, and they could sometimes do what there's a perfection. I think it's called kamavasayita, where a person could make water enter into the eye, into his or her eye, and then come back out through the eye. So this is impossible for modern scientists to do, to achieve the perfection of making water enter into a face and come out through the face. So even though this German scholar knew that a lot of these things were done by material science, that they could walk on water, they could live underwater, they could fly through the air, but because he knew that these things were easily achievable by yogis, he went to India to understand how it was done, and that they were actually greater scientists in a way than modern material scientists. So although we think that we're advancing in a lot of ways, yogis are more advanced than we are, because they can do these things without machinery, just by mental concentration. They can do sort of the impossible things, such as making water enter into the eye and come out through the eye. So these are ordinary, just like it's mentioned, Prabhupada mentions that even though the hog incarnation was not an ordinary hog, because he manifested himself, and he was very gigantic and very powerful. He could destroy a demonic person like Hiranyaksha, who tried to destroy the earth and submerge it in water. He was very, very, very powerful in this form. And even though Hiranyaksha was a very powerful fighter with club, he was defeated by Krishna. Krishna sometimes had to do seemingly very difficult things, like as a young boy, he in a wrestling match, he defeated two very skilled wrestlers, and in the end, he actually assassinated and killed Ravana. Ravana was a very powerful king, and he thought that this young boy couldn't possibly do him any harm, and yet he killed him on the wrestling arena mat. So he was very powerful, and even though he comes to the material world, one of the reasons he comes to the material world, apart from wanting to associate with his devotees, is to fight with demons. And he has to come to the material world to do this, because there's no demons, then there's no fighting in the spiritual world. In Goloka, there's no one who is of a demonic quality. So he has to come to the material world in order to fight. And Prabhupada has mentioned that sometimes fighting is done by any man who is reasonably wealthy. He gets into, he has like he engages in mock fighting with some of his personal servants. And this is what part of Krishna's nature is to fight or to because that's a human nature. So he has to come to the material world to do this. And part of his activity, almost every day he was killing one demon, one after the other, after the other, after the other, because that was part of being in the material world. Because it's not possible to do this in the spiritual world, because there are no demonic persons in the spiritual world. They're all in the material world. And you have to come to the material world in order to be demonic. And as we know, and I'm not trying to be facetious or to condemn, but there was an incident where there was a man who was, this is a real, not exactly a story, but an incident that occurred somewhere in India, where a man was convicted of murder. And his lawyer, or his, Prabhupada calls him a pleader, his lawyer pleaded the insanity principle. This man, he was insane when he committed this crime, so therefore, Your Worship, he was addressing the judge as Your Worship, you can excuse him, but from my point of view, everybody is to somewhat crazy. And the Prabhupada concluded the saying by saying that everyone who's not Krishna consciousness is, at least to some degree, a crazy person. In the early days, Prabhupada published a book called Who is Crazy? And in the beginning, when Nectar Devotion was published, he just assumed that people understood what transmigration of the soul was. He said, in the next life, this happened, in the next life, that happened. And mostly today, when people think of transmigration of the soul, they think it's a fantasy. They don't. A lot of people think it's possible. It's a probability, and even Hollywood has made films about their version of transmigration of the soul or reincarnation. But Prabhupada assumed that everyone in the West kind of already believed in it, and he when he first started out, he assumed that people already believed in transmigration of the soul. So I'll read the verse once again. Diving into the water like a giant mountain, Lord Bord divided the middle of the ocean, and two high waves appeared as the arms of the ocean, which cried loudly as if praying to the Lord, quote, O Lord of all sacrifices, please do not cut me in two, exclamation point. Kindly give me protection, exclamation point, close quote. So if anyone has any thing to say or anything to ask, now's the time. I just want to point out that this lecture is being broadcast. It's going all over the world, to as far away as places as Bangkok or wherever. So I'm not going to be able to answer everything exactly as if I were just talking to only the people in this room. But I will try. I'll do my best. If it's a very controversial subject, we may have to discuss it after class. But go ahead and speak. And just know that whatever you say is being picked up by people as far away as on the other side of the world. But I'll do my best. Yes, Sadhana? You have to get the microphone from Nandu, I guess, to speak.
So the whole world can
Yeah,
hear.
you're on.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your presence here at New Govardhana.
Well, I'm trying.
My question is, this Hare Krishna movement has a big mission, and sometimes things happen that I think Krishna wouldn't approve of, so why doesn't he come and fight for his mission?
Well, some people think that Krishna is just a fantasy, or because we don't see him, we don't smell him, we don't play with him, we don't talk with him except in prayers, and therefore he's not real. It's just a fantasy. The thing is that there's a verse that says that Krishna is present in his name. He's actually present. When we say Krishna, we're not just fantasizing about a being that may be up in the clouds somewhere, maybe sitting on a throne, but we're talking about a real person. And when we engage in deity worship, we know that even though they're made of marble, and sometimes they're made of wood, sometimes they're made of stone, sometimes they're made of paint, it's actually Krishna himself. So Krishna, and there's a verse that says that Krishna is Nama Acharya, Krishna Rupa Nama Avatara. Krishna is that the name Krishna is a bona fide avatar of Krishna. It's a descent of Krishna's name. So even though we don't see him, we don't play with him, we don't eat with him, we know that he is real and he exists, and we can actually join him at some point. But that's why people think that we are crazy, and we think sometimes that other people are crazy because they don't see Krishna. But Krishna is actually there all the time. And there's a famous quote that says that good friends are something like stars. We don't see the stars during the day, but they're always there. So Krishna is always there. He's always reading our thoughts. He's aware of what we're doing, and just like there are great famous people like Lord Brahma and Yamaraj. They even though they're material in the material world, they have the ability to know what others are thinking. They can read minds. So that's a special blessing that people that are empowered by Krishna have. And although we hope to have it, we may not have it. But if we strive, maybe it may take many lifetimes. We're willing to wait. I hope that's helpful.
If you don't mind elaborating a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just with this Hare Krishna movement, it's such a big mission to spread Krishna consciousness. I personally have a hard time understanding why Krishna doesn't give the green light for it to go ahead more and more, and he just allows that.
Krishna is very merciful because he allows even demonically inclined people to go ahead with their demonic activities, drinking, intoxicating, eating meat, and gambling, and so on and so forth. He's very liberal. He allows that. And we, although we're a very big movement, we're a very small movement. I mean, when we look at the whole planet, which has 8 or 9 billion people in it, and we only have a few 100,000 at the most who are, and as devotees, maybe 100,000 initiated devotees, maybe another 100 or 200,000 who are sympathetic but not necessarily initiated. Actually, we're very small. This is the nature of Kali Yuga. So when these demons appeared, they appeared in different ages. Ravana and his brother appeared in Satya Yuga, and Hiranyaksha and his brother appeared in Satya Yuga. Ravana appeared in Treta Yuga, and Sishupala and his brother appeared at the end of Dvarpara Yuga. So, but they were not ordinary. Like Sishupala, they had to come back to the spiritual world to become the doorkeeper, to remain being the doorkeepers. So unlike ordinary demons who just temporarily get liberation into Brahmajyoti and then they fall down, or they end up coming back to the material world, setting up hospitals or engaging themselves in philanthropic work, it's possible to be liberated. And in one lecture, when Prabhupada, I heard this, and I think it's true, was lecturing, I think it was in Los Angeles, he was finished, and someone asked him the question, is it possible to go back to Godhead in this lifetime? And Prabhupada didn't answer immediately, but thought for a few moments, and then he said, yes, it is possible. And then as he was walking out of the room, he pointed his finger at the person who asked the question and waved his index finger at him or her and said, but don't take advantage. In other words, it's possible, but it may take many lifetimes. It may take many years. But it's possible. And we have instances of people who were liberated and went back to Godhead, even in this material world, in the next body. Prabhupada talks about the Brahmin who was mentally worshiping Krishna, and he was mentally cooking sweet rice for him, and he thought the sweet rice was too hot, and he tested it and burnt his finger, and that caused Krishna in the spiritual world to engage in laughter. And when Lakshmi said, "What are you laughing about?" Then he told her the whole story, and he went and rescued this man with his carrier Garuda. He flew into wherever this man was and took him back to Godhead. So it's possible for some. It's for a very rare occurrence, but it does happen. It can happen. So we shouldn't think that we have to struggle lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, which we may have to, and we may have to be born as an insect, and we may have to even live in hell for a little while, but we can go back to Godhead if we're devotees. And sometimes devotees like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that even if I have to be born in hell, or the devotees who gave the dust from their feet said that maybe we'll go to hell for this, but it's worth it because Krishna wants it done. So I don't think they did actually go to hell, but they were kind of figuratively saying that that could happen because they were doing something that was very offensive. So does that help at all? I mean, Krishna is always there, even though we don't always see him. He's always reading he's there in our minds, he's in our hearts, he's in our bodies. He's always knowing what we're thinking. So even though it may appear that God is as a fantasy, it doesn't really exist, and there's a lot of people that think that way. Most people in the Kali Yuga think that way. But he does exist, and he's there. But he doesn't come necessarily to rescue all of us immediately, but he does it little by little by little by little. Sometimes it can be immediate, but it usually isn't. It would be nice. I fancy myself as a kind of Vaidhi Bhakti as opposed to a Raganuga Bhakti. A Raganuga is a person who is thinking about Krishna at every moment. His eyes are always wet. His or her eyes are always wet. His or her eyes are always wet. They're totally Krishna conscious. They're in the Raganuga platform. But in that all of us are mostly in the Vaidhi platform. We're doing it out of duty. We're chanting 16 rounds. We're worshiping the deities. We're coming to the temple. We're trying to be Krishna conscious, but we're not in the Raganuga stage. It's not spontaneous yet. But if we come to that, it will eventually come if we continue to act in Vaidhi Bhakti. At least that's what that's why we're here. It may take a long time, but it's sort of worth it, even though Krishna's not personally coming to get us, like he does for some people, or he did for some people. So anything else? Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.